that was the big one for me, is like, I can't ever do this again. And I can't ever get into a partnership or a situation where I haven't fully vetted not only the partners, but more importantly, the deal.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you're enjoying this show, please leave us a rating and review. It helps us get feedback from you, our great listeners, but also invites other people to find and discover the show. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, we've got a great show today. We're going to be talking to Cameron Barsanti. Cameron Barsanti, just 3 years ago, was an out-of-work actor who had just lost his wife's life savings in a feature film that he produced himself. He's collecting unemployment and still trying to write screenplays. When his second kid was on his way, they started to learn about real estate investing. Within a 2.5-year span, he's managed to build a $35 million self-storage portfolio with little to no money from the banks, and he did it all by cold calling. Let's welcome to the show, Cameron Barsanti.
Hey, John, thanks so much for the introduction. That doesn't get old. I chuckle every time. Sounds like a train wreck story.
It does.
But
Well, listen, I mean, you're the actor slash writer, so I mean, hey, it's your
yeah,
bio.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right, man. So no, but thanks for having me. Fan of your show. Happy to be here. Happy to chat with you. It's awesome. I was going back today, listening to one of your older episodes. His name was Brandon, and I don't want to butcher the last name. Episode, I think, like 493 for anybody interested. But he was content master, great
Yeah.
big following on
Brandon
the social.
Schlichter.
Yeah, Schlichter, that's right.
Yeah.
And it was cool, man, because he has, I think, a similar story in terms of like, I think it's so easy for us to always listen to other people's stories and be like, man, like, I can never get there, or they probably had an advantage or whatever else. But it's like, that's the beauty of real estate, right? You can go in at no advantage, knowing nothing, and learn your way through it and have a great, happy life if you kind of take all the steps that you need to take. And so his story was fun and refreshing, and he had some great fun points, and buying laundry mats and just trying to figure things out. But I think one of the messages I got was like, definitely his pursuit, right? He was taking action, and it obviously paid off for him. So
Yeah.
I had
Listen,
fun enjoying it.
it's a great conversation, great episode 493. We'll link to that one in our show notes there. But for you, Cameron, I mean, I went over your about a very high level, right? And obviously some ups and downs along that way. Why don't you take 2 minutes and give us a little bit more context on your story?
Cool. So 2 minutes or so. I'll be quick. Grew up in a small town in southern Colorado, Southwest, mountain town. Grew up pretty much just primarily playing sports, kind of a dumb jock. Always wanted to be an actor, but really always wanted to help people, inspire people. Like, I always had this idea that I really loved, the idea that I could motivate people or encourage people, right? And I didn't want to be a pastor, and I didn't want to be a motivational speaker. I didn't think, but all like ideas, at least urges within me. So anyway, I had a dumb idea, moved to Hollywood at 18 to pursue an acting career. I had some great opportunity young to working as an actor, was really kind of on a crash course as a human being, had a crazy 10 years of basically, again, crashing and burning and not really succeeding as an actor, blowing lots of opportunities, but most importantly, meeting my wife and kids, having kids, and realizing that when I tried to get back into the industry at 30 something years old, things were taking a lot of time to build momentum. As you mentioned, made a feature film, lost my wife's life savings. I was pushing 38 at the time, where I was shopping screenplays, founding really one of my true loves. I really love writing, and it was taking forever. And so my wife pretty much sat me down, said, "You're going to stop doing everything you're doing. No more funny business." She was pissed, really. And she said, "I've learned that we can start investing in real estate with pretty much no money." And so she literally pushed me into the wave. We drank all the Kool-Aid, listened to every podcast, going to meetups. And I think for us, because I was desperate and I saw a lot of opportunity, I was so excited at the idea of passive income and real estate and leverage and building equity, that I went all in, and I took a lot of action very, very, very consistently and quickly. And that's really how we got to where we are today.
Man, listen, I love that quick synopsis of your story, right? You talked about always having this desire to motivate people and try to figure out how that would manifest itself. Moving to Hollywood as a young teenager, right? 18 years old, move to Hollywood. You get in that career for about 10 years, start your family, try to get back into the space and just having no luck. And you mentioned spending your wife's life savings on a feature film that didn't pan out. Ended up, getting into real estate with her, pushing or shoving you into that direction. And ultimately you were able to have some success. I want to start really with the life savings part, because that seems like a pretty big thing. And we get to talk to some creatives from time to time. And I have friends who are, in that space and big writers and things like that. And I guess what made you say, hey, we're going to take your life savings and invest in this feature film, knowing how, I don't want to say finicky, but just realizing that there was no guarantee that was going to be a big ROI, right? It's not like a hard asset, right? So it's a creative endeavor. And I don't know if you want to get in the numbers a little bit, but like, you took all that money invested in this film. What gave you that confidence to do that? And then once you kind of, realized it wasn't going to pan out, just walk us through like what you were feeling, and kind of, how long did it take you to kind of get your head wrapped around the current situation?
Yeah, great question, and John, and I want to try and parallel it to real estate as much as I can, because there's actually lots of parallels, but it was more of a work in progress, and it wasn't intentional. I had two great partners, great friends, great guys that unfortunately we didn't have the same vision. I think we could all say, yeah, we set out to make an award-winning feature film, but I don't actually think we all really meant it in terms of, you know, uh, it became a rushed project, and we rushed the screenplay, which is really it is the blueprint of your house. Um, and by rushing it, we ended up spending years trying to fix a problem that was in the story. And so, you would never rush a real estate deal, right? You'd never not do the due diligence, but we did. And so halfway through the film, one of the partners had promised to bring money to finish the film, and he didn't. So my girlfriend at the time, my now wife, basically we were in a pinch, and we were about to get into a sticky situation with kind of a more kind of wolfish producer. And she said, hey, I don't want you to guys to do this, just borrow the money from me. And so that's how that happened. And it was by far the most stressful time in my life, and I'm glad I survived it. But and obviously, as you know, I think the more we struggle, the more we learn, and that was a big learning for me. It was um um it's a lot harder to lose other people's money, as everybody knows, right? And so the pressure of me doing that, and that's what happened, is we made a very mediocre product, which was too bad because there was so much potential. But after that happened, it was also like, oh, we lost all the money. No, it was like, hey, maybe we're going to get the money back. Oh, we got a great distributor. Actually, we did really well with our distribution, but it just didn't happen. And timing was, I think, also against us. But you were waiting and waiting, and finally realizing this isn't going to happen. And I think obviously the biggest lesson for me, and really the pressure, was when we started getting into real estate. I had this extra almost PTSD pressure of like, I can't lose again. Like, I can't mess up again. Right. And that was one thing, that our first real estate deal was actually a triplex in Texas. And it ended up being a nightmare because we closed 2 weeks prior to COVID hitting. And so there again, matched with this other kind of trauma, and yet we prevailed, we made money. But yeah, that was the big one for me, is like, I can't ever do this again. And I can't ever get into a partnership or a situation where I haven't fully vetted not only the partners, but more importantly, the deal. Right. Yeah. And I think that's what's been a breath of fresh air for the deal, is, again, my desperation met an opportunity, and the opportunity is called leverage, real estate, equity. And so anyway, that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that, right? Because these things happen. We make these investments, and ultimately you find yourself in a situation where you kind of needed to continue to invest in the current deal to get out of the situation. And to your point, I think that can manifest itself in a real estate deal, and life in different ways, where you've got a project that you know is not necessarily doing great, but you're gonna have to keep investing in it. I mean, we had a failed flip project that was like that, where I was gonna lose money, but it was a matter of, well, do I finish this project and pay everybody, or do I try to walk away? And for me, it's like, hey, if anybody believed in us, we want to pay them back and give them their money. So we ended up taking a bigger hit on it. But I understand exactly what you were thinking, because it also hurts the psyche, right? If you feel
Yeah.
like, you're confident, you want to go out there and do your thing. But if you have that kind of failure, it's tough to go out there and be confident on the next endeavor, when you have that kind of loss. Just talk to me about that. Like you mentioned, COVID hit when you bought that. Sorry, man. You
You're good.
mentioned that COVID hit when you bought that 3 unit. How did you how did you reconcile kind of the emotional roller coaster and maybe that PTSD with, kind of that failed project before, to get over that and continue to move forward?
Man, another good question, John. I love new questions too, especially, and these are making me think, outside the box a little bit. And again, it's fun how it all relates to really the lessons learned that are still kind of the lifeline of my current investments, right? But so for us, you know, what happened was, we invested in a triplex out of state that was on an island. I first brought it to my wife, and she's like, there's no way we're investing in this. She was actually upset that I even thought about it. And it didn't check all the buy boxes, but we did, as we continue to do more research, this area was very unique, but it had no housing for people that lived on the island. So there was a huge demand and shortage for long-term rentals. Okay. And so when it was ups and downs and roller coasters, right? It's your first deal. We pulled out $90,000 of equity in our house. That was all our money. And we were basically putting it all in this deal. And so you can imagine the roller coaster ride of emotions and underwriting it and looking at the market till we're blue in the face. And thankfully we had a pretty long runway to do that. But ultimately what happened was we did so much due diligence, and I know you and probably every investor relate. Every deal's the same to me, where at one point you've done so much work that you're like, you know what, man, this makes sense, and it's time to move forward, right? And so that's where we were at. Then COVID hit, and we were 2 weeks from closing, and I definitely got more, squirrely than my wife did, especially again because I'm like just so freaking traumatized by losing more money. And she looked at me and she was like, you know what? We've done our research, right? Like we did our homework. So yeah, we don't know what COVID's going to be like. And there might be some rough waters, but we did our DD, and she was right. And so that's what made us buy that. And so sure enough, literally the worst thing could have happened, right? And if you want me to get into some of the fun details, I will. But regardless, as that then unfolded, it was like, oh man, this is now even more stressful than anything I've ever experienced. But we got through it, and we made money, and we launched ourselves into the world of self-storage. And I'm sorry, of real estate, multifamily, and self-storage investing, all because of that one deal. And again, it's like we all are always going to be educating ourselves constantly about this business, this ever-changing business, but it's the action that gets us in the situation where we have to get ourselves out, right? And so that's what we did. We took action quickly, and thankfully it worked out very well and in our favor.
Well, I think the thing that's key there is that you took action, you found a deal, you found an opportunity, you did your due diligence. And even though you had some economic factors like COVID pulling back and causing some issues, you realize, you know what, the fundamentals of what we are looking for check out. Let's do it. And I think the thing that happens for a lot of people is it's easy to get scared and just do nothing. Like the way our brains are wired, we're fearful people. It's survival. So we'd rather do nothing than to actually take a risk. And once you take a risk, it kind of puts you in a position to, one, do a better job of analyzing said risk, but then two, keep moving forward and looking for solutions. Because otherwise, I mean, you already started, right? Once you're in the paddle and the water's going, you're in the water. Like you gotta go. You can't,
Yeah.
now's not the time to decide, you know what, I actually want to get out and go back to the dry land. Like, no, it's too late. You're already in the water. So you're in there and you're making the best of the situation. I know you focus on self-storage now, but you did start off in multifamily. Before we go to that transition, you said something a couple of times, and I think it's really telling. You said when desperation meets opportunity, or you didn't say it exactly like that, but I wrote it down as desperation meets opportunity. And you were in this mindset where you were desperate. You needed to make something happen. And real estate was that opportunity. How were you able to take that desperation and turn it into a catalyst to spark kind of this real estate portfolio?
Awesome. So, I remember when I was 18 and I moved to Hollywood, and I thought I had to be a stunt man to kind of work my way into the business. And then I ended up getting picked up by a pretty big, actually a huge agency. And then all of a sudden I was auditioning for these giant shows and movies. It was very overwhelming. And I had this opportunity that was so massive in terms of I had casting directors, I had executives, I had everybody championing me and saying, "Hey, look, you got a big career ahead of you." And I thought that opportunity was going to be around forever. I was very naive and immature and was like, "Oh man, this is easy. I can't believe it. I wasn't even an actor, and look at all these opportunities." I was very dumb and I was very wrong. And I can relate when I started learning about real estate. I felt like I saw an opportunity I never, ever had because I didn't understand it, right? A lot of the real estate we're doing is because we're lucky. We listen to Bigger Pockets, or maybe we met a partner doing it, or maybe our neighbor does it. If your family's not doing it, not on the broker side, but on the investing side, how do you learn these basics that I probably, John, you and all of us would agree that we should be at least learning some basics in high school, right? In your economics class, but the idea of leverage passive income and long-term equity growth through real estate. And I learned those basics, and I literally was all in. I was like, I can't believe this exists. And again, I just was so naive. I didn't know. I was very uneducated. And so I didn't know what a title company was, right? I didn't know what any of these things were. I didn't know how a loan worked. I didn't know how to get a loan. And I will say, and everybody hears me say it, but like I wouldn't be here without my wife, right? Like my partners, I have leveraged my partnerships in a way that has allowed me to do what I do now. And I coach people how to now invest in self-storage. So to think that I can actually help people across the country learn how to replace their W-2 incomes and do whatever they want is so amazing to me, but I couldn't have done it without everybody else. And so this idea of getting this education, this knowledge, and then going, "Oh my God, this is real. It exists." And like, we all can actually do it. And for me, it was so exciting. And again, I went all in.
I love it, man. Talk to us about self-storage. So how did you get into self-storage?
Yeah. I first, like I said, a friend of mine, Jens Nielsen, was the first coach that I ever hired. He's, I think, buying in Cincinnati nowadays and has been for a while. He's a syndicator like yourself. And um, so what we learned very young, very early on, is we kept hearing everybody talk about their mentors. And there were even people that were like really successful. And so we were like, well, man, if people that are like extremely successful are saying that they wouldn't be there without our coach, why would we think any differently? And now, obviously, in retrospect, we're like, oh my God, everybody has a coach or a mentor. Like even like, the NBA coaches have coaches, right? Like it's so obvious. And so we didn't have the money, but we hired a coach, and Jens was the first one. And I learned how he was analyzing properties, how he's evaluating, where he was looking. And so we basically started leveraging his information and help and guidance and started, investing. And so we bought a triplex, and I was cold calling primarily. I was doing tons of cold calling, looking on Craigslist, really looking off the beaten path, not on the market very much. I had 40, 50 hours a week to spend doing it. And that's what I was spending all that time looking for deals. And then I found an 11 unit in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I leveraged Yin's partnership and a new partner in Albuquerque. We bought that together. My then partner, who was a 24-year crazy seasoned, super successful investor, then started helping push me into a bigger wave, right? Like more guidance. And he said, "Hey, you looking for a cash flow market? There's one in southern New Mexico. You should look around there. Very cheap to buy, good cash flow." So I pulled a list off the internet. I called every multifamily investor, and one ended up telling me that it wasn't a multifamily apartment she owned, but condos, but that she had heard a bank bought another bank and there were some REO properties. So it was this crazy kind of treasure hunt. But what I ended up finding and doing through this series of crazy calling and looking was I found a bank-owned self-storage facility. And so that was 2.5 years ago, just over. It's our number one in our portfolio of 10 storage facilities. And that was it. That was the one. I bought it. It was 40 something percent occupied. Bought it for about 330 grand. It's worth, over $2.5 million now. We've pulled a second mortgage out on that and just bought $8 million of storage in California that we paid $2.4 million for. And so that one little kind of seed that we planted has really flourished and was one of the several deals that really kind of expedited our career. So
that's amazing. If I heard you right there, you said basically a lot of cold calling. You ended up finding somebody who told them that, someone else owned the property. The bank had acquired it. The bank acquired another bank. And this was an REO or real estate owned by the bank. You acquired that property for $330K. It was 40% occupied when you first got it. You stabilized that asset, were able to pull out some equity or do a cash out refi, and then use those proceeds to go out there and acquire an $8 million self-storage facility out in California. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about the power of leverage, I mean, goodness, all of that from a cold call, buying a $330,000 property, stabilizing that, and you traded it up just like real life Monopoly to get you an $8 million property. That's incredible. I think too, and you're in New Mexico, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So I think one of the things that is very powerful is, one, I'm going to go back to your desperation plus opportunity line. The desperation, you could take it as a negative, but I really take it more as the commitment to making something happen, and not necessarily being 100% clear of what it is or how to do it, but you're just committed, right? You're going full steam ahead. You just may need to make a little bit of a left or a little bit of a right. And that desperation, I think, what I heard you say is that kind of gave you the commitment to even hire a coach, even though you didn't have that much money. You still went and hired a coach and made that investment. You took that feedback, you started to invest, partner together, and then ultimately you got pushed into these larger deals, these larger opportunities. The insight I'll take away for everyone is, one, do the thing that scares you. Because if you know it's going to push you in the right direction, sometimes half of it is there, right? You can use whatever quote or analogy you use, aim for the moon, you'll still wind up amongst the stars, anything like that. But if you're going, Joe Ferris is a friend of mine and a mentor of mine, and I love a quote he says. He says, your goals should be 50-50 goal. And what he means is 50% of the outcome or what you want should be on achieving that goal. The other 50% should be the pursuit of it. You should be gaining value, not just enjoying. I'm not saying you like it or it's fun. I'm saying 50% of the value or the return you get is the pursuit of that goal. And if you're making cold calls, if you're analyzing deals, you're putting in offers, you are growing as a real estate investor, even if you never get a deal from those actions, right? But that is going to help you grow and refine skills. And 50% of that value is coming from those steps. And then obviously getting an off-market deal or winning, that's going to be the other half of that goal, right? And that's what you were doing. And when you talk about that desperation plus opportunity, that's really what you're getting at, right? We're saying it different ways, but the point is you've got to take action. You've got to have commitment. You have to have faith. And if you're doing those things, you can see success. And if you're not seeing success, you might have to work a little bit harder than what you're already doing, and that may just be what it comes down to. I'm sure I heard you say that you coach some students as well. I'm sure some folks who have gone through coaching programs who were successful and some folks who maybe were not successful. What do you think the difference is when you look at yourself and you look at some of your clients, some of the other people what do you think the difference is between those people who are successful and those who maybe struggle?
Yeah, awesome. And I'm so glad. I love how you put that, and I'll tie into kind of what you just said to answer that question. So what I was noticing a lot is I was talking to a lot of people that were, again, educating themselves quite a bit, and yet they were still stuck moving the needle forward. So it's like some even had paid for a lot of money for other programs. And so the idea of like people that are sitting there, hundreds or thousands, that actually know how to invest, right? Like they know how to underwrite, they have this education, but yet they don't have really an actionable plan to start moving the needle forward on a daily, weekly basis. Because I know you do, John, right? I know that you're on a weekly, daily basis grinding towards your goals. And so for me, well, my observation was, oh man, they don't have a roadmap. They actually just don't know what to do. So what happens instead of that is they then keep waiting for another opportunity. And so one thing that I'm a huge component of, and in retrospect, what we did, and I break it down to three things. I mentioned partnership, I mentioned mentorship, and the last thing that I will stress the most is deal flow. I did something that I think a lot of people don't do right away, but I learned how to underwrite, and then I was off to the races. I pulled equity out of my house, and I was like dying for a deal, right? And so I was looking for deals full time. And because of that, guess what happened? I started having opportunities all the time. Every week, every other week, I was going to meetups and I'm like, hey guys, I got this deal. Like, none of us knew what we were talking about. Man, I'm like, it's like a 20% cash on cash. Like, did we really know? We were underwriting and we were doing a good job, but and people are like, I can't find a deal. I can't find a deal. I can't find a deal. And so what happened was, because I worked so hard on my deal flow, I always had an opportunity. And those opportunity, then circling back to what we're talking about, was my excitement. I never had, it's like going and fishing in a lake that doesn't have any fish, right? Like, can you imagine how freaking boring that gets, right? Or you're in a pond where you're like at least getting bites every couple minutes, right? I was getting bites every couple minutes. I was even catching fish. If they would break off the line, I was going to catch another, right? And so that action, that opportunity threw me into this, my magic and secret word is momentum. And my momentum never died. It never stopped. In fact, I was so excited because I was feeling these deals in front of me. I was seeing them. I was getting a glimpse of them. And so none of my students will ever after they leave, and anybody that I talk to, I never want them to say this. I never want them to be like, I've been trying to invest in multifamily or self-storage for 6 months or 12 months, and I don't have it. I'm not having any luck, right? And so that momentum, that excitement, that deal flow for me was crucial.
Yeah, you're talking about the feedback loop too, right? Because you're out there, and even if you don't get the deal, and your analogy was great, right? If you're fishing in this pond, you may not necessarily, reel in that fish, but you're getting bites. You're getting them, pulling them, some of them up, and maybe you get due diligence and you realize, oh, it's not going to work out. But you're getting positive feedback that says, hey, you're on the right track. Keep fishing, keep going. And I think that's so important for people, especially when they're trying to get that momentum, is realizing that you're on the right track, but you're also getting feedback. Maybe you need to make adjustments, or maybe you're not making enough calls. Maybe you're not underwriting enough deals. Maybe you're not talking to enough investors or brokers.
Totally.
And it's okay to get that, to get that feedback and understand what it is, because that feedback is going to be the difference in you realizing that, hey, here's what it takes to be successful. And you got to be willing to put in the work. I mean, there's a saying, and I think there's a book by the same title. It takes what it takes, right? And sometimes
That's good.
we realize that we just may not be willing to pay that price, and that's okay, because you can still invest in real estate on the passive side, working with groups like ours and yours, where you're out there, you're taking the time to find these deals, and they can still get involved. If folks do want to learn a little bit more about working with you, or learn a little bit more about your story and your company, they can check out your website, storagelife.com. And then on Instagram and social media, your Storage Life Cam. So they can find your handle right there. But I really enjoyed listening to you talk about kind of your journey and what you went through. You've built out this really, successful portfolio now, over $35 million portfolio in just a couple of years. And a lot of it is driven through the hard work and effort you put in, and being able and willing to take advantage of the opportunities that have, I won't even say presented themselves. I think you were really proactive in making these opportunities appear. So great lessons and insights for all of us to take away from that conversation. Right now, we're going to go to our round of insights. You ready?
Yeah. Thanks, John.
All right. We kind of talked about this one, but maybe you got something different or you want to elaborate. But give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
I'll give you actually a recent one just to switch it up. I lost a deal that I later came back and bought from the wholesaler, but it was a elderly owner, and it was a 50,000 square foot facility, and it was right next to a 60,000 square foot facility that I was buying. And so I made a couple of mistakes, and one mistake was that I didn't evaluate the deal properly. I didn't actually prioritize the lead appropriately. I knew she was older, and she told me she was going to sell it to her son. But what I knew, and I knew better, was it was such an important lead for me that my follow-up game was weak. It took me 2 months to follow up with her, and some may say, well, that's not a long time because she told you she wasn't buying the deal. Wasn't selling the deal. And now what I've learned is I didn't prioritize that deal appropriately. Had I have prioritized it appropriately, because it was such an important asset and fit our scale of 50,000 square feet or over, right next to a facility we were buying, I should have followed up with her every 2 weeks or at least once a month. And I've had a few big deals that I have lost. That one slapped me in the face. And I went back to my deal funnel that I've built out over the last 3.5 years. And it's a machine at this point of, what did we do wrong? Because we lost a very, very obvious deal that was very important to us. And how do we fix that so we don't lose another deal like that? Or at least we don't give it our best shot that we won't lose a deal like that. So, very specific, maybe not overly powerful, but for us and for our team, it was a big lesson.
No, I love that insight, though. I think there's lots to take away from that, particularly learn from those mistakes and revise kind of those processes, and then nurturing those leads. If you're going to be going direct to owner, you got to figure out how do you stay in front of them, because they may make a decision at any moment in time, and you want to be top of mind whenever they do make that decision. All right, give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Digital or mobile resource. This is a fun one. I just started using it. It's pretty basic. Just the Otter AI. I'm guilty that I have a full-time assistant that does everything technical for me. Thank goodness. I probably wouldn't be here today. I would have probably not made your podcast. No. And so that one's fun. We just connect it to Zoom, our Zoom recordings, and it's an Otter AI. It shows up and it records everything and takes notes for you. And if anybody's not using it, I totally recommend checking it out. It's lots of fun. So.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Admittedly, I'm not a reader, and it's not something I'm proud of. You hear all the time people talking about Tony Robbins, and I've just never listened to him. I think, unfortunately, I was too dumb and ego driven to really give him the credit. And again, just really lack of knowing anything. And then I started hearing people quote him all the time. And every time I'd hear Tony Robbins quote, I'd be like, that's incredible. It's actually so profound, so simple and amazing. And so I just started listening to Awaken the Giant, and it's something that I already was like, well, I'm an idiot. I'm going to listen to this thing like 5 times. Just if you can remove yourself from, maybe he's cheesy for you, or maybe it's not your style. Like, it doesn't matter. His content and obviously his devotion to his craft is just, it's above and beyond, as we know, what most people have done in their lives. And so I'm really enjoying it, and I recommend it.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
I like to close my eyes, even if it's for a minute or two, if I miss it in the morning, or maybe it's 5 minutes, and really just a moment of gratitude and thanking the universe or whatever it is, if you're spiritual or if you're religious, really being thankful and grateful for being alive, having a family, having kids, and having the opportunity to pursue real estate and living in the US. And we're just really lucky, and that gratitude really keeps me grounded.
Give me your number one insight for self-storage investing.
Number one insight, I'll find somebody who's really good at it. and is doing it, and follow their lead. And like you said earlier, whether you're a passive investor or you want to be an active investor, find a horse to bet on. Don't get too carried away with, shiny object. I'm biased, but I think it's one of the best assets along with multifamily. Find somebody who's good at it. Find a person you like to talk to, and really learn from them as much as you possibly can.
All right. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
That's funny. There was a Japanese restaurant in Pasadena, California, Osawa, and I miss it dearly.
Well, there you go. We'll add that one to the list. Listen, we had a lot of good information from you, Cameron. You talked about really, your background, really want to get into the, the film space, being an actor, being a stunt man, having a lot of opportunities, but not really valuing the opportunities that you had at that time. When you lost all that money on that feature film and got into real estate, you value kind of the opportunities a little bit more, and that desperation met opportunity, and you were able to create something special. Even though it started off with a challenge with that 3 units, some of the issues you face, you were able to take that and continue to move in the right direction. And also we moved into self-storage. Here you are now with $35 million portfolio, including the deal that you basically exchanged to put out some equity to buy, which I think is just amazing. And it's great for us just to think about it. I think the big takeaway is, you want to be committed to the goals. We all, have some challenges and things that we've overcome. But if you can take all that and use it as fuel to stay committed and focused, you take that desperation, and again, desperation really in the sense of I cannot fail, I will not fail, not necessarily that, the world's going to end, but just that right mindset of taking that desperation, having it meet the opportunity. And if you stay committed to that, you can see some great growth and great results. I just want to thank you for sharing that story. It's been great to talk to you and get to know you a little bit. And I want to thank you for being a guest today on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, John.